Laughter echoed through the courtroom, sharp, careless laughter that bounced off cold wooden walls and polished marble floors. Lawyers in expensive suits leaned back in their chairs, whispering jokes behind their hands. Even the spectators smiled, amused by what they believed was a child's foolish fantasy. In the center of it all stood a small boy, barely 10 years old, clinging tightly to his father's shoulders. His clothes were worn, his shoes torn, but his eyes held a fire no one expected. His voice trembled, yet carried across the room with quiet determination. "Let go of my father," he said, "and I'll make you walk." The laughter grew louder. No one noticed the judge's fingers slowly stop tapping the desk. Adam felt the laughter like stones thrown at his chest. His face flushed, but he did not step back. Instead, he tightened his grip on the wheelchair handles, grounding himself. He looked around the room slowly, meeting eyes one by one. Some turned away. Others stared with curiosity. A few showed discomfort. Adam did not know the language of law, but he understood people. He understood when they stopped seeing someone as human. And in that moment, he refused to let them forget. The judge watched silently. Years on the bench had hardened him, taught him to separate emotion from judgment. He had seen lies dressed as tears and truth hidden behind calm faces. Yet something about the boy unsettled him. Adam did not cry. He did not plead. He stood still, like someone who had already accepted loss but refused to surrender hope. The judge leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable. For the first time, the courtroom began to quiet, not because someone demanded it, but because something invisible was shifting. Adam spoke again, softer this time. "My father isn't weak," he said. "He's tired." The words landed heavier than any accusation. A pause followed. Even the lawyers stopped moving. Daniel opened his eyes and looked at his son, seeing him not as a child, but as a mirror reflecting his own forgotten strength. Somewhere deep inside the courtroom, beyond rules and procedures, a question was forming, one that would not be answered by evidence alone, but by conscience. The courtroom had settled into a strange silence. The lawyers shuffled papers, some pretending to consult their notes, but none dared interrupt the small boy. Adam, feeling the weight of every pair of eyes, took a deep breath and let the quiet strengthen him. He remembered the nights his father had comforted him, whispering that courage was not the absence of fear but moving forward despite it. Now, it was Adam's turn to embody that courage. Slowly, he released the wheelchair's handles, stepped back, and whispered to his father, "I'll do it. I'll make you walk." The room tensed, as if the air itself was holding its breath. Some laughed again, thinking it a child's fantasy, yet this time their laughter was softer, uncertain. Adam approached the wheelchair with careful steps, each one deliberate, each one brimming with intent. Daniel watched him, heart pounding, unsure whether to believe. The courtroom's regular rhythm, laws, judgments, expectations, seemed suspended. Adam knelt, took his father's hands, and guided him gently, whispering encouragements like a mantra. The judge's assistants glanced at each other in disbelief. How could a child hope to defy gravity, law, and biology all at once? But Adam was not asking for permission. He was showing a truth that defied reason. Hope could make the impossible tangible. Daniel felt a warmth he hadn't felt in years, his son's faith acting like a bridge between despair and life. The lawyers tried to mask their reactions, but some of them shifted uncomfortably. Adam's presence made them realize that everything they were arguing, technicalities, rights, evidence, was meaningless compared to the courage standing in front of them. A few spectators leaned forward, their faces softening, realizing they had laughed at something far deeper than a simple act of law. Outside the courtroom, in the lives of ordinary people, strength is often measured in subtle ways. Adam was measuring it with his small hands, pushing against injustice and limitation in the only way he could. Daniel's fingers trembled as he felt the first faint stirrings of motion, and a hush fell like a blanket over the entire room. By the time Adam coaxed Daniel upright, some of the lawyers were staring, mouths slightly agape, and a few of the onlookers were holding back tears. Daniel's legs wobbled, his body protested, but he was moving. Not because science or medicine allowed it, not because law decreed it, but because his son refused to let him remain defeated. Adam's small hands were steady anchors, guiding him toward a place where dignity could exist once again. And as the judge watched from the bench, his hand gripping the gavel, he realized that the balance of justice was shifting, not because of rules, but because of a child's belief in his father's life. The courtroom erupted quietly, not with laughter this time, but with a stunned, reverent silence. No one had expected what they were witnessing. Daniel took his first few steps, supported by Adam's small hands, and each movement carried a lifetime of struggle and resilience. Spectators wiped tears, lawyers stared at the spectacle, and the judge sat back, momentarily speechless. For years, he had presided over trials, assessing guilt, innocence, and punishment. But never had he witnessed such raw, human triumph, an act of courage and love that defied every calculation. Adam, still holding his father's hands, seemed to carry the weight of all broken spirits, all unspoken promises, and all forgotten hope in that single moment. Daniel finally stood fully upright, supported only by Adam's unwavering faith. He looked around the courtroom, meeting the eyes of those who had laughed. There was shame, surprise, and a strange admiration. The lawyers, realizing the futility of words against this living truth, fell silent. Adam's small voice broke the quiet. "This is my father. He is strong. You can't take that away." His words were simple, yet they reverberated through the room, unmasking pride, ego, and indifference in a way no argument could. Daniel felt his chest swell, not from physical strength, but from a restored sense of dignity, a reminder that life, however cruel, could still bend toward grace. The judge's gaze softened. He had seen adults fail themselves, their families, and even justice. Yet here was a child, embodying patience, courage, and unconditional love, teaching lessons no law book could contain. He slowly rose from his bench, the courtroom holding its collective breath. Silence fell heavier than before, heavier than any laughter. The gavel remained untouched. For the first time, the law deferred to humanity. Adam's determination had rewritten the narrative in the simplest, most profound terms. Compassion, patience, and courage could overturn assumptions and awaken conscience even in the hardest hearts. Adam and Daniel remained standing, father and son, a picture of resilience and hope. The judge finally spoke, his voice steady but full of emotion. "Let this be a lesson that no law can substitute for humanity, and no arrogance can withstand the quiet force of love and belief." The lawyers, too, began to nod, and even the spectators murmured agreements. The room had transformed from a place of judgment to a temple of humility, a place where the human spirit's quiet insistence proved stronger than fear, scorn, or disbelief. Adam looked up at his father, eyes shining, knowing that together they had changed not only their fate but also the hearts of everyone present. In the days that followed, the story of the small boy who made his father walk spread through the city. Newspapers, local channels, and social media shared pictures and narratives, yet none could capture the depth of what had truly occurred. It wasn't a miracle, at least not in the supernatural sense. It was a combination of patience, belief, and relentless love. Adam's small hands had done more than hold his father upright. They had reminded the world that courage and compassion are forces no amount of cynicism can suppress. Daniel, now walking with support and hope, felt a renewed purpose, to rebuild not just his life, but the faith that had been broken in those around him. Adam returned to school, but he was no longer just a boy among peers. He had carried the weight of humanity in his small chest, proving that age and size mean nothing in the face of determination. People who had laughed at him now sought his story, seeking guidance from the courage he displayed. Adam's quiet insistence on believing in his father's strength became an example for everyone, a reminder that sometimes the smallest voice carries the loudest truth. Daniel would watch his son, humbled and grateful, realizing that the greatest lesson he had ever received was from the child who had refused to surrender hope. The courtroom, once a symbol of judgment and rigidity, now served as a memory of transformation. Lawyers reconsidered the weight of empathy in their work. Judges reflected on how justice must always account for humanity. spectators, once entertained by ridicule, were left changed. The smallest act of courage, a child standing for his father, had created ripples far beyond the walls of that room. And Adam, oblivious to the fame or recognition, remained focused only on his father, his unwavering love quietly teaching the world what it means to believe in someone holy and without reservation. Years later, Daniel would tell Adam that the boy had saved more than his ability to walk. He had restored dignity, rekindled hope, and reminded a world hardened by rules and pride that the human spirit is stronger than any limitation. Adam's story became timeless, not because of a miraculous act, but because it reflected the purest truth: love, patience, courage, and faith in others can transform the impossible into reality. In that small boy, humanity glimpsed itself at its finest, compassionate, resilient, and unyielding. True strength is not measured by power, wealth, or size, it is measured by love, patience, and belief in the potential of others. Humility is found in recognizing that no one is weak when supported by compassion. Courage is not the absence of fear, but the willingness to act despite it. Adam and Daniel's story reminds us that every act of kindness, every patient word, and every moment of faith carries the power to transform lives. In a world often blinded by ego and haste, it is the quiet, steadfast heart that teaches the deepest lessons: to stand for others, to believe in them, and to nurture the humanity that binds us all.